What would happen if tomorrow morning you woke up and said exactly what you thought? Not the careful, filtered version you've perfected over years of social conditioning, not the diplomatic translation that keeps everyone comfortable, but the raw, unedited truth that burns in your chest every time you swallow it down. The opinion that makes your jaw clench when you bite your tongue. The response that sits heavy in your throat every time you choose silence over honesty. I'm asking because I suspect you can't even imagine it anymore. You've been performing for so long that you've forgotten what your real voice sounds like. You've spent your entire existence as a professional editor of your own soul. Every morning, you wake up and begin the exhausting process of deciding which parts of yourself are acceptable for public consumption and which parts need to be hidden, modified, or completely erased. You scan your environment like a social meteorologist, reading the emotional weather, adjusting your personality accordingly. With your family, you're one person. At work, you're another. With friends, you shift again. Online, you curate yet another version. And somewhere in this endless hall of mirrors, the real you has disappeared entirely. This isn't adaptation, it's spiritual suicide. You tell yourself it's wisdom, maturity, being a good person who considers others' feelings. But what if I told you that this endless self-censorship isn't virtue, it's violence? Violence against your own soul, violence against your authentic self, violence against the person you were meant to become before the world taught you that your natural state was somehow wrong, inappropriate, too much. Rollo May, the existential psychologist who dared to confront the deepest human truths, understood something that most people spend their lives running from. Authentic existence requires the courage to be disliked. He wrote extensively about what he called the daimonic, that vital creative force within each of us that refuses to be tamed, refuses to be diminished, refuses to apologize for existing. This force is neither good nor evil, it simply is. It's your essence, your core energy, your authentic self-demanding expression regardless of others' comfort levels. But society has taught you to fear this force, to suppress it, to negotiate it away in exchange for the fool's gold of universal approval. You've learned that the daimonic is dangerous, that your authentic self is somehow flawed, that your natural responses need constant editing and improvement. So you've spent years, maybe decades, building an elaborate prison around your true nature. The bars are made of "what will they think?" The walls are constructed from "I don't want to upset anyone." The lock is forged from "maybe I should just keep quiet." And you've thrown away the key, convinced that this cage is actually protection. Every morning you wake up and put on the costume of acceptability. You rehearse your lines in the mirror, practicing the responses that will earn approval rather than express truth. You prepare for another day of being who others need you to be rather than who you actually are. And with each performance, a little more of your authentic self dies. With each compromise, another piece of your soul gets buried so deep you forget it ever existed. With each time you bite your tongue to keep the peace, you sign another contract with your own spiritual death. The most tragic part: you've become so skilled at this performance that you've convinced yourself it's real. You've worn the mask so long that you think it's your face. You've played the role so consistently that you believe it's your identity. You've edited yourself so thoroughly that you can't remember what the original manuscript looked like. And in this state of total self-alienation, you wonder why you feel empty, anxious, unfulfilled. Why happiness feels like a foreign concept. Why peace seems like an impossible dream. Why you lie awake at night with the gnawing sense that you're living someone else's life. There's a drug more addictive than heroin, more destructive than alcohol, more pervasive than any substance known to humanity. It doesn't come in pills or powders. It's injected through glances, snorted through compliments, mainlined through social media likes and comments. It's the drug of external validation. And you're a junkie, we all are. The only difference is most people don't realize they're addicted until it's too late, until they've traded their entire authentic existence for the temporary high of being liked. Watch yourself for one day. Just one day. Notice how your mood shifts based on others' reactions to you. See how your confidence fluctuates depending on who validates you and who doesn't. Observe how your sense of self rises and falls like a stock price based on the market of other people's opinions. Track how much mental energy you spend anticipating reactions, managing impressions, calculating the social impact of every word before it leaves your mouth. This isn't normal human behavior. This is addict behavior. You're constantly seeking your next fix of approval, your next hit of acceptance, your next dose of being found likable by strangers whose opinions shouldn't matter. Like any addiction, the tolerance builds over time. You need more and more validation to feel the same high. You need stronger and stronger approval to fill the same void. A simple good job used to satisfy you, but now you need elaborate praise. A basic acknowledgement used to suffice, but now you crave detailed recognition. The bar keeps rising, the need keeps growing, and your entire emotional ecosystem becomes dependent on forces completely outside your control. You've handed over the remote control of your inner state to anyone and everyone who crosses your path. Rollo May saw this clearly in his work with patients who had lost themselves in the desperate pursuit of love and acceptance. He understood that what most people call love is actually dependency disguised as affection. They don't want to be loved for who they are. They want to be loved for who they pretend to be. They don't seek authentic connection. They seek constant confirmation that their performance is convincing enough to earn continued approval. They don't desire real intimacy. They crave the security that comes from being found acceptable by others, even if it means never being known by anyone. The withdrawal symptoms from approval addiction are brutal and immediate. When you stop getting your regular fix of validation, anxiety floods in like water through a broken dam. When people don't respond to your carefully crafted messages, panic sets in as you wonder what you did wrong. When someone expresses disagreement with your opinion, your entire sense of self wobbles like a house of cards in a windstorm. When you're criticized, even constructively, your nervous system goes into fight or flight mode as if you're being physically attacked. This is not strength. This is not maturity. This is complete emotional dependency on forces outside your control. But here's the cruel irony that Rollo May understood. The more you chase approval, the further you drift from the very authenticity that could earn genuine respect. The more you modify yourself to be likable, the less there is of you to actually like. The more you perform to avoid rejection, the more you reject your own true self. You become a hollow shell, a beautiful facade with nothing substantial behind it. You win the popularity contest, but lose your soul in the process. You gain the world's acceptance, but forfeit your own self-respect. You achieve the appearance of connection while experiencing the reality of profound isolation. You've made your peace conditional on their approval. You've made your worth dependent on their validation. You've made your very sense of identity contingent on others' reactions to you. And in doing so, you've made your freedom impossible. Because freedom requires the ability to exist independently of others' opinions. Freedom demands the courage to be disliked. Freedom necessitates the willingness to stand alone when necessary. And as long as you're addicted to approval, as long as you need their acceptance to feel okay about yourself, you will never be free. You didn't set out to become a prisoner of other people's opinions. No one ever does. You started with noble intentions that seemed not just reasonable, but virtuous. Being kind, avoiding unnecessary conflict, maintaining harmony in relationships, keeping the peace in social situations. These seemed like good things, positive traits that caring people should cultivate. Society certainly told you they were admirable qualities. Your parents praised you for being agreeable and easygoing. Your teachers rewarded you for compliance and cooperation. Your friends celebrated your accommodation and flexibility. And slowly, brick by brick, good intention by good intention, you built the walls of your own prison. The bars of this prison aren't made of steel. They're made of what will they think. The walls aren't concrete. They're constructed from I don't want to upset anyone. The foundation isn't solid ground. It's built on the shifting sand of, maybe I should just keep quiet to avoid problems. And the lock? The lock is something you installed yourself when you decided that their comfort was more important than your truth. When you chose their peace over your authenticity. When you selected their approval over your integrity. When you determined that avoiding their negative reactions was worth the price of silencing your own voice. Rollo May understood that anxiety isn't just a random symptom that appears without cause. It's a signal, a messenger, a warning system. It's your authentic self screaming from behind the walls of conformity, begging to be released from its suffocating prison. It's your true nature gasping for air under the weight of other people's expectations. It's your soul dying a slow death from the poison of perpetual performance. The depression you feel, the emptiness you carry, the persistent sense that something vital is missing from your life. This isn't necessarily a chemical imbalance that needs medication. This might be spiritual starvation. This might be what happens when you systematically starve your authentic self to feed your social image. Every time someone asks your opinion and you deflect with, "What do you think?" You're not being humble. You're being self-destructive. Every time you agree when you disagree to avoid an argument, you're not being diplomatic. You're being dishonest. Every time you laugh at jokes that aren't funny to avoid awkwardness, you're not being socially graceful. You're being inauthentic. Every time you nod along with conversations that make your skin crawl because you don't want to rock the boat, you're not being mature. You're being cowardly. You're choosing the slow suicide of social acceptability over the vibrant life of authentic existence. The most insidious part of this prison is that it feels virtuous from the inside. Society has convinced you that self-sacrifice equals goodness, that accommodation equals kindness, that compliance equals maturity. You've been taught that having strong opinions makes you difficult, that expressing disagreement makes you argumentative, that standing your ground makes you stubborn. You've internalized the message that good people make themselves small so others can feel big, that caring individuals dim their light so others don't feel overshadowed, that mature adults suppress their truth to maintain social harmony. But these are lies, sophisticated lies designed to keep you manageable, keep you controllable, keep you from claiming your full power as an authentic human being. True virtue doesn't come from erasing yourself. It comes from expressing yourself fully and responsibly. Real kindness isn't about making everyone comfortable at all times. It's about being honest enough to create genuine connection, even when that honesty creates temporary discomfort. Genuine maturity isn't about avoiding all conflict. It's about engaging in conflict with integrity, courage, and respect for both yourself and others. The prison you've built keeps you safe from rejection, but it also keeps you safe from real connection. It protects you from criticism, but it also protects you from authentic praise. It shields you from conflict, but it also shields you from the deep satisfaction that comes from standing for something meaningful. You've traded the possibility of being deeply known for the guarantee of being generally acceptable. You've exchanged the risk of authentic relationships for the security of surface-level connections. You've given up the chance to be truly loved for who you are in exchange for the certainty of being tolerated for who you pretend to be. If you're still with me, if these words are cutting through the comfortable lies you've been telling yourself about the nobility of people-pleasing, then hit that subscribe button right now. Because what comes next isn't just uncomfortable, it's terrifying. It's the complete dismantling of everything you thought you knew about how to exist safely in this world. It's the death of your people-pleasing self and the violent birth of something far more powerful, but infinitely more vulnerable. Your authentic self. Here's the truth that will either liberate you or send you running back to the familiar safety of your conformity cage. You cannot be free until you accept, truly accept, that some people will hate you. Not just dislike you or disapprove of your choices. Not just disagree with your opinions or question your decisions. Hate you. With a passion that surprises even them. With an intensity that seems disproportionate to whatever you did to trigger it. with a venom that reveals far more about their internal wounds than it does about your external actions. When you stop editing your truth to make it palatable to everyone, some people will be genuinely repulsed by the taste of your authenticity. When you stop softening your edges to avoid cutting others with your sharpness, some people will bleed from contact with your unfiltered reality. When you stop dimming your light to make others comfortable in their chosen darkness, some people will be blinded by your brightness and lash out in pain. When you stop shrinking yourself to make room for their egos, some people will feel exposed by contrast and attack you for making them look small simply by being your full size. This hatred isn't random or meaningless, it's actually highly informative. When someone hates you for being real, they're really hating themselves for being fake. When someone attacks you for speaking truth, they're really attacking themselves for living lies. When someone punishes you for being free, they're really punishing themselves for choosing slavery to others' opinions. When someone resents your authenticity, they're really resenting their own cowardice in the face of social pressure. Your freedom triggers their awareness of their own bondage, and that awareness is unbearable for people who have built their entire identity around the prison they've accepted. Rollo May understood that authentic existence threatens the social order because it exposes the unnecessary nature of most people's suffering. When you demonstrate that it's possible to live without constantly seeking approval, you inadvertently reveal that others have been imprisoning themselves voluntarily. When you show that you can be disliked and survive, you prove that their fear of rejection has been controlling them unnecessarily. When you live authentically despite social pressure, you become living proof that the conformity they've accepted isn't actually required for survival or happiness. But here's what most people never understand. Their hatred is not really about you at all. It's about them. It's about their own unlived life, staring them in the face through your example. It's about their own abandoned dreams, reflected in your courage to pursue yours. It's about their own suppressed authenticity, screaming in recognition when it encounters yours. It's about their own choices to prioritize safety over truth, comfort over growth, acceptance over integrity. You become a mirror that shows them what they've given up, what they've compromised, what they've sacrificed on the altar of social acceptability. The moment you truly understand this, the moment you realize that their hatred says absolutely nothing about your worth and everything about their wounds, something fundamental shifts inside you. The approval of others stops being the currency you desperately chase. The opinion of the crowd stops being the metric by which you measure your success or failure. The comfort of conformity stops being worth the astronomical price of your soul. You begin to see hatred not as something to avoid at all costs, but as information, as data about who these people really are, what they really value, how they really see the world. Most importantly, you start to recognize their hatred as confirmation that you're on the right path. Because people who are living authentically, people who have found their own freedom, people who have done their own inner work, these people don't hate others for being real. They celebrate it, they recognize it, they respect it, even when they disagree with it. Only people who are trapped in their own prisons of conformity feel threatened by others' freedom. Only people who have abandoned their own authenticity feel triggered by others' truth. Only people who have betrayed their own souls feel compelled to attack others for honoring theirs. When you truly grasp this dynamic, hatred becomes almost a badge of honor. Not because you're seeking to be hated or trying to provoke negative reactions, but because you understand that being hated by certain types of people means you're living in a way that threatens the very systems of control and conformity that have been crushing human spirits for generations. You're not just living authentically, you're proving that authentic living is possible, and that threatens every person who has convinced themselves that their cage is actually protection. When you finally cross the threshold, when you finally choose your truth over their comfort, your authenticity over their approval, your freedom over their expectations, something extraordinary and unexpected happens. The world doesn't end, The sky doesn't fall. Your relationships don't all collapse into chaos. Instead, something more beautiful than you ever imagined begins to unfold. You start to actually live instead of merely surviving. For the first time in perhaps decades, you sleep peacefully. Not because everyone likes you, but because you finally like yourself. Not because you've managed to avoid all conflict, but because you've stood for something that matters more than temporary harmony. Not because you've successfully pleased everyone around you, but because you've honored the one person whose opinion actually determines the quality of your entire existence, you. The anxiety that used to consume your days begins to fade, replaced by a deep sense of alignment between who you are inside and how you show up in the world. The people who remain in your life after you've shed the mask of universal acceptability, these are your real people. They don't love you despite your flaws and rough edges. They love you because of your wholeness, including the parts that aren't always easy or comfortable. They don't appreciate you for your agreeability and accommodation. They respect you for your integrity and backbone. They don't value you for your compliance and flexibility. They treasure you for your authenticity and strength. These relationships have a depth, a richness, a realness that your previous performed connections could never achieve, because they're based on truth rather than pretense, on reality rather than illusion, on who you actually are rather than who you thought you should be. But perhaps the most profound change happens in your relationship with yourself. When you stop betraying your own truth to maintain others' comfort, you begin to trust yourself again in ways you had forgotten were possible. When you stop sacrificing your values and principles for the sake of social harmony, you begin to respect yourself again with the deep respect that comes from integrity. When you stop choosing their approval over your own self-respect, you begin to love yourself again. Not the conditional love based on performance and achievement, but the unconditional love based on your inherent worth as a human being, brave enough to exist authentically in a world that constantly demands conformity. Rollo May spoke extensively about what he called the courage to be. The fundamental bravery required to exist as yourself in a world that's constantly trying to make you into someone else, someone more manageable, someone less threatening to the established order. This courage isn't the absence of fear. It's the decision to act in alignment with your truth despite the fear, because of something more important than comfort. It's the choice to speak your mind even when your voice shakes with nervousness. It's the commitment to stand for your values even when you have to stand completely alone. It's the willingness to be hated for who you are rather than loved for who you're not. The freedom that lies on the other side of this courage is unlike anything most people ever experience in their entire lives. It's the freedom to wake up in the morning and not have to remember what persona you're supposed to wear that day, what role you're supposed to play, what version of yourself will be most acceptable to the people you'll encounter. It's the freedom to express an opinion without first calculating its social impact, without running it through the complex algorithm of potential reactions and consequences. It's the freedom to say no without drowning in guilt, to say yes without hidden resentment, and to speak your truth without apology or qualification. This is the freedom to be disliked, misunderstood, even hated by some people, and to remain completely unshaken in your sense of self-worth, because you know that your value doesn't come from external validation. It comes from the alignment between your inner truth and your outer expression. It comes from the integrity of living according to your own values rather than others' expectations. It comes from the deep satisfaction of being genuine rather than popular, authentic rather than acceptable, real rather than liked. When you reach this level of freedom, something magical happens in your relationships with others. Because you're no longer desperate for their approval, you can actually see them clearly for who they are, rather than who you need them to be to validate you. Because you're no longer performing for their acceptance, you can offer them genuine connection rather than strategic interaction. Because you're no longer afraid of their rejection, you can love them from a place of fullness rather than neediness, from strength rather than desperation, from choice rather than compulsion. The people who can handle this level of authenticity in relationship become your true companions on the journey of life. They don't need you to be anything other than exactly who you are. They don't require you to edit yourself for their comfort. They can disagree with you without making you wrong, challenge you without trying to change you, love you without trying to control you. These relationships become sanctuaries of truth in a world full of performance, oases of authenticity in a desert of pretense. This is your invitation to join a revolution that starts in your own heart and radiates outward to transform every relationship and situation you encounter. Not a political revolution fought with weapons and violence, but a personal revolution fought with courage and authenticity and truth. A revolution against the tyranny of universal approval that has been crushing human spirits for generations. A revolution for the right to exist as you are, rather than as others need you to be, to feel comfortable and secure. This revolution begins the moment you decide that your freedom is worth more than their comfort. The moment you choose your truth over their approval. The moment you pick your authenticity over their acceptance. The moment you select your integrity over their validation. This is when you stop being a slave to others' opinions and start being the author of your own life story. So I challenge you with everything in me, stop performing, stop pretending, stop editing yourself into an acceptable version for public consumption, stop sacrificing your truth on the altar of social harmony. Let the people who can't handle your authenticity fall away like leaves in autumn. Let the relationships based on pretense and performance dissolve like sugar in rain. Let the connections built on your willingness to be less than you are crumble into dust. Because what remains after this cleansing will be real. What survives this process will be worth keeping. What endures will be built on the unshakable foundation of authentic existence. The people who stay, who can handle your full truth, who love you not despite your authenticity but because of it. These are your tribe. These are the relationships worth having. These are the connections that will nourish your soul instead of draining it. That will celebrate your growth instead of demanding your stagnation, that will encourage your freedom instead of requiring your imprisonment. If this message has awakened something that's been sleeping in your soul, if you feel that dormant courage stirring in your chest like a dragon waking from slumber, then subscribe right now. Join the ranks of those who've chosen freedom over fear, authenticity over acceptance, truth over comfort, integrity over approval. Because this isn't just a YouTube channel, it's a community of people who've decided that being real is infinitely more important than being liked, that being authentic is far more valuable than being accepted, that being free is worth any price in terms of others' disapproval. Write in the comments, I choose my truth over their comfort. Let's see how many people are ready to step out of the prison of people-pleasing and into the wild, beautiful, terrifying freedom of authentic living. Let's count how many souls are ready to trade the safety of conformity for the adventure of authenticity. Let's measure how many hearts are prepared to risk hatred in order to claim love, real love, the kind that sees you completely and chooses you anyway. Because at the end of the day, you can't be free until you let them hate you. And that freedom, that beautiful, terrifying, life-giving, soul-expanding freedom is worth every ounce of their disapproval, every moment of their hatred, every second of their rejection, every bit of social discomfort that comes from choosing truth over popularity. The choice is yours, and it's the most important choice you'll ever make. Stay in the familiar cage of conformity, safe but slowly dying, or step into the wild unknown of authentic existence, dangerous but vibrantly alive. Choose the security of being liked by everyone while being known by no one, or embrace the risk of being hated by some while being deeply loved by the right ones. Pick the comfort of universal approval while living a universal lie, or claim the challenge of selective acceptance while living your specific truth. The door to your prison is unlocked. It has always been unlocked. The only thing keeping you inside is your own fear of what lies beyond those walls. But beyond those walls is everything you've ever wanted: freedom, authenticity, real relationships, genuine self-respect, and the deep peace that comes from living in alignment with your truth. The path is clear. The choice is yours. The only question left is, do you have the courage to walk through that door and into the life you were always meant to live?